I think we have a quorum now. Most of us are already here, so I will just give the floor to Constantina as our host, and she will present today's session. In the end, when we are about to finish, I will again speak a little bit about next week. But for the moment, let's concentrate in this week online session. So Constantina, whenever you want. Thank you.
Thank you, Santos. Dear Clovers, welcome to our fourth session this week, which is dedicated to different experiences as well as a discussion that will follow of forest conservation in Europe with our three speakers, Diego, Martina, and Marco. So within the next 30 minutes, we are going to hear about old-growth forests from Diego Garcia Ventura, who is MSc in Environmental Science and Project Officer in Fernando González Bernaldez Foundation, or UNGOVE, since 2010. All his professional career has been linked to management and conservation of protected areas, both in university departments, ecology, UAM, and in private enterprises, or as a freelance consultant. Recent projects tackle several aspects of protected areas management, from monitoring impacts of outdoor recreation and developing, carrying capacity approaches to Natura 2000 management, setting management frameworks for Natura 2000 sites in Spain, as well as evolution of Life Plus in Spanish Natura 2000 network. He is currently involved, together with the UGOVE team, in the LIFE project Red Bosques Clima, focused on forest adaptation to climate change. Diego, the next 30 minutes is on you.
Okay, thank you very much, Constantina. Good afternoon for all. I'm very glad to be here with you. Many thanks to European Nature Academy for giving me the floor and the opportunity to talk you about this interesting and amazing topic. That probably takes me less than 30 minutes, so don't panic, okay? As Constantina said, my background with old-growth forest starts in 2016 through the LIFE Red Bosques project. This is a project mainly focused on prospection, identification, and characterization of old-growth forests in Spain, okay? During this project, our team have the opportunity to identify these scarce forests in Spain and also set the basis for managing and protecting them, okay? So let me share my screen, please. Here we go. Well, I would like to break the ice asking you this question, okay? How does an old-growth forest look like? Which are the elements and structure we expect to find into this kind of forest? For that, we will use the Jamboard tool. So, Maria, please, would you mind sharing the Jamboard link with us? Okay. I think 2 or 3 minutes to think and write about this should be enough, I guess. So, okay, let's start, please, and write all do you think we can find in an old-growth forest.
So you have the link to the Jamboard in the chat, and we can use sticky notes, Maria, sticky notes to add these elements that Diego mentioned that are characteristic of old-growth forests.
I'm seeing big trees, yes. One of the most commonly indicator for outdoor forest. Insects, a lot of bugs, yes. One of the charismatic species associated or linked with dead wood. Dirty and messy, yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, this is the common image that most of the forestry professionals have about old growth forests. There is a mess of forest, a dirty forest. Very structured, different vegetation structures. Oh, I see you have background about old growth fungi. Yes, another moss and lichen. Rich soil, yes, as we can see in the next slides. Soils of old growth forests is an important carbon sink. Okay, full of life, yes. A great biodiversity is one of the most commonly referred characteristic of old growth. Some gnomes and fairy tale beings. Yeah, my last slide is linked with this topic. It's a surprise. No or little human influence. Good. Okay, I think, well, it's a good brainstorming exercise. Congrats for all. Well, I think it's enough. It's a big picture of old growth forest characteristics. So I think we can come back to the presentation. Okay, this is the picture and the image of an old growth forest. As you have already said, one of the great characteristic of old growth forests is the presence of very thick trees, both dead and alive. Okay, we have a high variety of microhabitats. The microhabitats it's another common indicator of old growth forest studies, researches, and classification projects, like hollows, cracks, woodpecker nests, suitable for, of course, specialized species in this kind of forest. A high quantity of dead wood, both standing dead trees and coarse debris. This is an important habitat for a wide variety of dead wood depending species, named saproxylic species. You have already said also that forest canopy comprises a varied species and age classes. It favors high species diversity and increases their resilience against climate change effects, for example. The forest canopy occupies several vertical layers, and this is the reason of the presence of and predominance of shade-tolerant species. And in a true old growth forest, we can see small gaps created by disturbance, natural disturbance, as snow strikes, wind strikes, small lighting fires, and so on. These small gaps increase heterogeneity and allow regeneration in our old growth forests. Okay, so this is an iconic or canonical image of an old growth forest. And what about these old growth forests in Europe? Where can we find these forests in our continent? Obviously, maturity is the scarcity ecological process and more difficult to find in most of European countries due to the ancient land use and the long time of the tree life cycle. Okay, according to the definitions of forests in relation to their anthropogenic use, only a few primeval forests, as we can see in literature, those that never were logged and without significant influence by human activities, okay? And other large old-growth forests can be found in some North and East European countries. We keep all in mind the case of Białowieża forests in the Białowieża National Park in Poland. But for most European countries, old-growth forests only can be found in small stands. I think you probably can take some examples of your countries. Mostly in inaccessible spots with high slopes, in scree habitats, where land use never was profitable or was protected, but by several reasons, like hunting reserves, sacred sites, watershed protected in order to provide water to urban areas, and so on. Okay, this is the state of the question in our continent. This is the current situation of European old-growth forest identification. This work that you are seeing in the screen is the main work doing in the European context, led by the Professor Francesco Maria Sabatini and many researchers and collaborators who have been working on this during the last years, including our team, our Spanish team, through the LIFE Red Bosques project. This inventory is continually uploaded with contributions from the latest old-growth identification projects and initiatives. Okay, and you may have a look to this work on the slides links. And why are they scarce? Regardless of the fact that some of these forests and stands were left untouched, either in remote locations and reserves and protected areas, classical forestry traditionally removes the old growth and natural gapping structures in the salvogenetic cycle. Okay, this is a canonical salvogenetic cycle in a forest. So we commonly find forests with young trees, very homogeneous in terms of structure, and without large dimension deadwood amounts. Okay. The importance of old-growth forests is well known, as we could see in the last exercise. They are shelters of a specific and scarce biodiversity, where some species of bats, of birds, saproxylic insects, fungi, and bryophytes are starlings, of course. Most of these species are also included in both habitats and birds directives. Being rare and poorly known phases for several types of forest habitats, they are key to determine the favorable conservation status of them, as is stated in the Habitats Directive. Promoting some old-growth attributes in forests may be a good way to conserve specific biodiversity items, either in protected forests or not. Okay, we will try to see it in the next slide. And recent scientific papers highlight the importance of several old-growth attributes for forest resilience to climate change, such as the diversity of the species, what the literature calls as functional features, okay, or related to their heterogeneous structure that allow forests to be more resilient to fire progress, among many others. In terms of mitigation, biomass and soil in old-growth forests are relevant carbon sinks, as I point. And all these reasons led the protection of all EU primary and old-growth forests into the European Biodiversity Strategy for 2030, as you probably know, under the category of strict protection. Well, a frequent argument we usually face is, well, okay, guys, then, in your opinion, all the forests should be old growth in order to be in a favorable conservation status. But our answer always is absolutely no. We should be able to maintain forests with stands in different stages of a phylogenetic cycle, as we see, including old growth and guaranteeing their connectivity. And of course, some of the young stands are compatible with forestry in this approach. Okay, you can see here an image from a real project in Catalonia region in Spain, natural park of El Sports. And here we can see how old growth forests are fitting in a well conserved forest at a large scale, okay, at a landscape scale. In this landscape scale, we find old growth forests, but we can find other forests important for the protection, like Quercus rotundifolia forest or Taxus baccata forest. In these cases, we can start forestry measures in order to promote these kind of habitats. And of course, it's recommending to do clearings, some kind of controlled fires, create and maintain open areas, and in some cases also introduce herbivories. Okay, I'm talking about some rewilding projects that include these kind of measures, and so on. So for us, in our conception of forest conservation at a large scale, this image, this picture includes this kind of intervention where, of course, all global forests can be keeping in touch. And the second part of my intervention includes some elements, some ideas, of course, for the next discussion about what can we do to protect and promote the old growth forest. I have already said that all primary and old growth forests that I suggest to have a look to the European Union definition of primary and old growth forests in some documents. These primary and old growth forests must be strictly protected. Okay, the ways to achieve this target are varied. We have several categories of protected areas like natural reserves and many others. We may play with zoning in these protected areas, and of course, a good idea, I think, is promote reserve stands in forestry plans, in forestry planning, in order to avoid human intervention, except monitoring, of course, and some environmental education activities. On the other hand, we may find forests near to maturity, okay, but where some old growth attributes are lost or don't appear. For example, we can think to promote heterogeneous structures, dead wood presents more gaps in next to maturity forest. In order to boost that, some forestry tools and activity could help, like thinning, clearing, avoiding competence on target tree species, bark ringing in order to promote standing the trees, and even low-intensity controlled fires as a simulation of natural fires. This is the case of some forestry measures in order to promote conservation of old-growth forests and forests in general in the Mediterranean context, where lighting fires open naturally the forest and avoid ignitable biomass accumulation at a small scale, okay? And therefore, the big fires that unfortunately we have seen in recent times, like this is the case of Greece, of Spain, Italy, and other Mediterranean countries. Okay. But what about jungle stands or also productive forests? Well, old-growth forest teaches us when we want to promote forestry under conservation criteria. Okay, we can see it in the literature as pro-silva forestry. This is the case of, for example, living thick trees due to their amounts of microhabitats and biodiversity in a productive forest, or deadwood promotion in order to facilitate the survival and the presence of saproxylic species like beetles, woodpeckers, and many others. Okay. So for my part, this is all. But related to fairy world, I want to finish my intervention, my presentation, with a citation of one of the greatest tree and forest lover of the last century, the world famous writer J.R.R. Tolkien, whose works are plenty of wonder and respect for forests. Okay, so this is the citation linked to fairy world. That it's it's true that in our minds this kind of old-growth forest is related to our idea of a fairy forest. Okay, so thank you very much. I expect more discussion in the next minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Diego. And also it is very nice to give tribute to special people and scientists. It is very nice of you. Thank you for your presentation. Discussion will follow after the other two speakers will finish. Now we are going to, for the next 10 to 15 minutes, we're going to have Martina Keilbach. She's a biologist with studies at the University ULM with practical experiences in Mexico and Brazil, among other things like having kids, and currently working at the UBF in the Wienerwald. Martina, please.
Hello to everybody. I'm trying to share my screen now and start the presentation, and I hope it will work. So can you see it?
Yes.
Can you see the
Martina, perfect.
Okay, then good afternoon from my part. I would like to give you a short insight in a project from the Austrian Federal Forests, or ÖBF, Österreichische Bundesforste, where I'm working. It's called Woodland Areas for the Forest Dormouse. Here are some short facts about it. It took part from 2020 to 2023 in Austria, and the leader was the ÖBF and my colleague Birgit Rotter. Also, we had a private institute, which is called Apodemus, and the Austrian Conservation Trust taking part in it. The funding was from the federal and state governments of Austria and also from the European Union. I think AIFRD is the correct type of it in English. I hope so. What is a forest dormouse? Triomys nitedula is a small rodent in the family Gliridae. It's nocturnal and it prefers dense, well-structured forests. In cold region, it hibernates. It is protected under Annex 4 of the EU Habitats and Species Directive. It lives in Eastern Europe and parts of Asia, and Switzerland represents the western limit of its distribution. The project had 3 goals. First was to improve the knowledge about the population situation in Austria. Second one was to inform forestry stakeholders and to develop a catalog of measures. And the third one, of course, raising awareness and public relations to get people kind of in touch with this rare animal. To the first goal, improvement of knowledge, we had some measures like installing 600 nest boxes in 20 different forest sites with shrub layers. Most of them were in protected areas. We monitored them 4 times and controlled whether there were animals inside. We controlled their weight and documented the situation of the forest around as well. Additionally, some audio detectors were installed. The second goal, to inform forestry stakeholders, led to the following measures. We had a stakeholder dialogue with foresters who are responsible for the monitoring areas. We identified measures to improve the habitat of the forest dormouse, and we created a brochure for forestry practice, including a catalog of measures. You can see the brochure here on the right side. Unfortunately, it's only in German. Project presentation during several conferences by my colleague Birgit Rotter, for an example in Bulgaria at the International Dormouse Conference, at the International Symposium for Research in Protected Areas, and also at the workshop about endangered small mammals in Bavaria. The third goal, awareness raising and public relations, had these measures involving citizen scientists, call for reports via press releases, which was very successful, and offering excursions and lectures to interested people. Also, we provided a homepage with information and hands-on guidelines how people can do helpful measures for dormice. We also created a booklet for kids. That's the one here on the right side. It's Billy, the forest dormouse, and in this part I was involved too, which was lots of fun to do. The results were from the monitoring. Altogether, we got 59 proved reports of forest dormice, but only 2 individuals amongst them were detected in those 600 nest boxes. The most of the records came from the rural population. You can see the map here on the right side. The green little spots are the evidence of forest dormouse. And the garden dormouse are shown here in the brown dots. The yellow dots are hazel dormouse and the gray ones the edible dormouse. You can see the distribution is kind of spatial. There seem to be the forest dormouse seem to be extinct in the east of Austria, and almost most individuals were found in Carinthia here in the south of Austria. The result of the audio detection was that the database of calls was generated. There were some surprises and a highlight in this project. We were really surprised that most people, we were really surprised that in some regions the rural population is quite familiar with the forest dormouse, because it's really a rare animal. Most people never have heard of it, including me. And so it was a surprise that some people just said like, oh, yeah, I know it there, like fox or something else. And its presence, the presence of the forest dormouse close to human buildings was also something unexpected. By chance, a film team attended my colleague when she found the forest dormouse in one of the nest boxes in Salzburg. And this led to even a report on BBC. I put the link there, so if you want to share this exciting moment with my colleague, you are invited to do that later. Lessons learned from this project. The reports from the local population made a success factor. It needed less effort than the nest box monitoring, because just those few disseminations from and press releases led to a big response, and not really much personal support for this or for the citizen scientists was needed. The nest box monitoring might not have been successful because the forest provided many structures itself. It's like Diego said, maybe there were just enough hollows and structures so that the forest dormouse felt no need to use those extra houses. Something also interesting, which wasn't expected, was that the audio detection seems to be a really promising tool, and the big advantage of it is it's not invasive, and the results from can be gathered. There can be results from the very first moment from the monitoring season. Don't have to step in the forest, but you get data. Here's some more information about the project and some links where you can find information. I consider to check the Baumschläfer homepage, because you can find there some sound files to hear what a forest dormouse sounds like. Unfortunately, everything is in German, also the broaches, the one for the foresters and the one for the kids. But if you want to have a look on it, you're welcome. Yeah, that's all from my side, and thank you very much for your attention. I hope you learned something about the forest dormouse you haven't known before.
Thank you, Martina. Very impressive and interesting, both presentations. And now for our third one, from Marco Gallaverni. Last but not least, for the next around 10 to 15 minutes, who has a PhD in biodiversity and evolution. He has been studying wolves in Italy and across the world for over 15 years, with dozens of published scientific papers. After working as a research collaborator at ISPRA, the Italian Institute for Environmental Protection and Research, he is currently the OASIS Education and Activation Director at WWF Italy, where he coordinates the network of around 100 protected areas, directly or indirectly managed by the association mentioned. He has a passion for scientific dissemination, reflected on popular science books and media shows. Marco?
Hi, Konstantina. Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for inviting to present this project. I'm afraid the introduction was longer than the presentation itself. So still, specifying that I'm more of a large carnivore person, today I will try to share with you the experience of a life project that WWF Italy carried out until this very final steps of the project. The name of the project is Life Forestal and is dedicated to the restoration of two priority habitats in Natura 2000 sites. During the presentation, I will ask the support of Eduardo, which is our Clover fellow, which is much more experienced than me in forest management. So we will share the load of this presentation. So this is the first target habitat that we wanted to work on. So as you see, these are alluvial forests of elder and ash, which is quite widespread in Europe, with good representation mostly in Germany, Poland, France, and Italy, but with strongly, well, mostly bad conservation status all over the continent, especially for, well, except for the Black Sea biogeographical region, all the other ones are in bad conservation condition. So a good target for conservation and restoration actions. And the second target habitat is less of a forest habitat, but still quite important and much rarer. Again, with a good representation in Germany and France, but also Italy and Spain. And again, especially in the Mediterranean biogeographical region with a bad conservation status. And so it happened that this type of habitat was already present somehow with little patches in one of the protected areas that we manage in Italy. So here on the right side, you can see the bell ring of San Marco Church in Venice. So this is the island of Venice, so a very famous and popular location. And this is a view from the oasis, from the reserve. So it's right across the Venice Lagoon towards the mainland. So we are in the Veneto region within the Venice Lagoon. And the area is used to be a former fishing valley. So the boundaries of this wetland were built artificially to separate somehow the inner part of the lagoon from the outer part of it, just to raise fish and do hunting activities and so on. So to gather basically food and do recreational activities. It's overall 200 hectares, almost 80 of them directly owned by WWF, thanks to donations or something, and is currently recognized as a state reserve beside a Natura 2000 site and also an international and wider Ramsar site. And it hosts up to 10 different habitat types of community interest, and the two of that we just saw are of priority interest. And of course, as you can imagine, it's rich in birds, migratory and nesting and wintering, pond turtles, mammals, and lots of fish. Also quite challenged by invasive species, but the main point is this is the only protected area in the overall Venice Lagoon. And it's the only one open to the public because all the other ones are still fishing valleys and hunting grounds. So it's really a unique island within the lagoon, protected island within the lagoon. So the project started a few years ago with a number of partners, as it always happens. So a public coordinator and then several private and public entities, which is a good match. For an overall project budget of almost 2 million euros. And it was supposed to last 4 years. Then we asked for a little delay of 6 months. So it's gonna end in a couple of months from now. So I'll leave the floor to Eduardo to tell you something more about the specific actions foreseen by the project, and then close the presentation with some lessons learned. So Eduardo, if you can step in.
Yes, here I am.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I will go through the main actions of the project. First of all, as Marco said, the main goal of the project was the restoration. So first of all, the first habitat is the alluvial forest. So we did some conservation, restoration, and expansion habitat, which was the goal for this priority habitat. We planted more than 20,000 seedlings of this species, which came from a local nursery to guarantee the genetic the genetic of these plants were appropriate with the site, with the reserve, and some of them instead were produced inside the reserve. So in the end, we obtained an expansion of this priority habitat more than 10 times the original dimension, so which is a good goal. And also as a specific action of this main action, we dredged some sectors of the channels and install some locks. This is always for the same goal, so to encourage the natural expansion of the habitat. Next, please. Then we had the same similar actions, but for the other priority habitat, which is the calcareous fence. This time we planted about 10,000 seedlings and more than 4,000 for the herbaceous plant. And this time we obtained an extension of more than 200 times compared to the original expansion, which was less than 0.1 hectare. So this is also a good goal that we achieved. And then we also did not only some planting, but also some more engineeristic, let's say, actions to reshape and to lower the height of the habitat to make it easy to submerge. And this is always to encourage the expansion of the habitat. Then there was also some action more related to the water circulation. As you may know, the water is very particular and needs to have very specific characteristic in a lagoon because it is a particular habitat where the circulation is close but not totally close because it's not a lake. So again, we did some dredge activities of the canal and modernize the locks and put some sensor to have a better monitoring of the water level of this area, not only the reserve but also the nearby areas. And then using the local materials, so to have this sort of circular economy, we created some bands to protect the stretches from the erosion, which was a threat of the habitat also inside our reserve. And last but not least, there was this problem before the beginning of the project of the invasive species, both plant and animal species. So another one of the other main actions of the project was the removal of these species. Regarding the plant species, we removed the robinia, so the tree, and also the Baccharis salimifolia. Instead, regarding the animal species, there was the capture and removal of the catfish, which was a threat for the native fish species and communities. And as in all projects, there was also some communication and dissemination actions. We had, in particular, since the OSI is a reserve, which usually is open to the public, we organized some events instead inside the OSI, open to the public, to do some dissemination and to raise the awareness. We produced some communication material. We installed some panels inside the reserves to communicate what was going on with the project, which were the main goals and so on. We had meetings with the local stakeholders, in particular public administration and the one that live or work nearby the reserve. And we did some networking also with other life projects with the similar goals to the one we were coordinating. And and there was also the monitoring part for the fauna. So for the wintering birds, which are the more particular species inside our reserve. Not only the species, but also other ecosystem services, for example, the CO2 sequestration, which was one of the main services that our OSI is able to furnish, but also the water purification, nutrient trapping, and so on. And also an analysis of the socioeconomic impact of the project on the territory.
So as you see, it's a project on a very peculiar panel of habitats at the very boundary between alluvial forests and wetlands, but of course quite representative of the Mediterranean landscapes. So okay, just some lessons learned. So of course, in terms of strength coming up from the project, great cooperation with the partners, and the ability of doing some adaptive management of the project, of course, due to delays or some difficulties or changes needed during the project. That was something successful. And also, we are quite confident that the project could be sustainable over time. So even at the end of the project actions will be carried out by the local community and of course by ourselves directly as a protected area manager. Thanks to, you know, now there are lots of knowledge about producing new seedlings, correctly manage water levels to foster the maintenance of the two priority habitats and so on. But of course, we also had to face weaknesses because one partner had to quit during the project, so it was quite tough to substitute it on the run without losing funding and the ability to carry out the foreseen actions, as well as, well, during the COVID pandemics, which hit quite hard in this part of Italy, it was not easy to carry out some of the dissemination activities. And the main question I would like to share as food for thought is that, okay, we did great, but overall, this impact seems to be super local. Okay, so we increase 10 times the specific habitat type for one and 200 times for the other, but still we're working on a few hectares. How can we scale up this type of projects at the appropriate scale at the European level to be effective in counteracting these absolutely bad conservation status for this habitat type? So food for thoughts, and back to you, Constantina.
So Marco and Eduardo, great teamwork. All three presentations were very interesting, and I believe we are going to have a lot of follow-up questions, suggestions, or possibly answers. So by raising hand, we have enough time to solve and to exchange our thoughts. Any comments?
Yeah, Artemisa is expecting to talk.
You hear me? Okay, so first of all, I really like to thank you all of the presentations that were really nice and I would say really good connected. I have a question, especially for the last one, as I found it more closely to also my interest regarding the expansion of the priority habitats by 10 times. I think is a really huge milestone to reach this number in, I think, 3 years of project, right? So I would like to ask a question regarding how you perform all this in really short words for sure, but how you ensure that this will go on and it will be sustainably managed from the protected area administration. And I don't know how it works actually in Italy for the administration of the protected area. Would it be under WWF still, or would it be under some government body? And Another follow-up regarding the local impact. I think you mentioned very well in the beginning of your presentation regarding the evaluation of the ecosystem services. So I think this is really well connected to the impact that this expansion of the habitats will have to the local community and also to the region, I would say. But it's really good that you have reached such milestone in a really short time.
Well, thanks a lot, and both for the question and for the sharing of thoughts. So of course the results were possible in a rather short time frame due to excellent collaborations at the local level with technical local bodies of public administrations with whom we already had good pilot collaborations in the past. So they were ready to step in to understand the challenge and also find ways of making feasible. So yeah, this was the very basic ingredient to make it possible. And moving to the outcomes, of course, the topic of ecosystem services, of course, fundamental. We are still kind in the middle of it. I mean, we have data, we can provide data, but finding a way of valuing them, well, still we are not completely ready. And I think at the global level, there's a lot of talks going on about nature credits, biodiversity credits, and especially for areas, even forestal areas that not manage to get profit out of it, but just to maintain nature. So also on this topic, I would really love to hear from you if you have further experiences and hands-on possibility to support the long-term conservation actions for protected areas. Regarding this, and I'm finishing, fortunately, well, in this case, we are the formal management body of the state reserve, and we do receive public funding. This is quite an exception across 100 small to quite large protected areas that we managed. Only like 12 of them do receive public funding, and in this case that's enough. So provided the improvements made possible by the LIFE project, now with ordinary funding we will be able to keep on doing all the actions needed to maintain the habitats we managed to expand and recreate.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So next Mije is waiting, I think.
Yes. Are you hearing me? Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, all colleagues, for their nice presentation. I was really happy to hear your experience in many directions regarding conservation and managing forests and biodiversity. As I represent here national government, Ministry of Environment, Special Planning and Infrastructure, especially Institute for Nature Protection in Kosovo. And as a new country, we are trying to do the best and to protect our forests. But in some part within our protected areas in border with Montenegro and Albania, we have some problems with forest damages. So my question is to experts, maybe Mrs. Diego Garcia can explain. We have some dry area of the forest by damages by beetles. So as experts, please, I want to know, to hear your opinion. Do you think that we need to cut them or to leave them in that place when they are actually, or to treat, or what to do in this case. We had meeting with colleagues from Ministry of Environment from Montenegro, and we are trying to do action plan, especially for beetles. But really, all of us do not have any specific idea what to do. And we are afraid, in another side, we are afraid that this problem will be shared maybe to be outside of our forest. So we are in a really bad situation regarding that.
Okay, thank you, Nesmije. Well, I think first of all, you should determine if the reason of these tree mortality is related to associated to climate change. In our experience in Spain, some pest attacks, some beetle attacks is related to their tree vulnerability after the drought consequences in these kinds of forests. So I think it's the first time the first action is to determine if climate change is behind this kind of tree illness that promotes beetle attack. Okay. So in our experience here in Spain, I don't know in other countries. I think some people in the room could talk about our country's experience. But in our cases, this is one of the reasons. So, well, in order to avoid these beetle attacks, some clearing actions or some forestry actions could be good for promote forest resilience to this. But in my opinion, the best option is to determine if surely climate change is behind it. Sometimes to promote tree diversity in these forests is a good way to boost these functional attributes that I've been talking about in forest climate change adaptation. Okay, so this is my way.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Diego. I just wanted to add that because we are here in a group with a lot of experiences from different parts of Europe. If any other comment, any other advice for this question is available in the group, you are free to talk now. I mean, we are, of course, we have today these 3 presentations, but any of you are free to comment, to give answers or maybe questions, I don't know, about this specific topic or any other topic that has been raised during the presentation. So if anyone would like to add something to what Diego already stated, this is the moment. If not, I have some extra questions for our 3 guests today. One is for Diego. It has to do with the last slide, this Tolkien quote, which is quite charming. But on the other hand, maybe, Diego, don't we have a problem, a cultural problem, that our idea of this old growth mature forest is too much influenced by the stereotypes from Northern and Central Europe? I mean, talking from a Mediterranean country, maybe we need to let's say, disseminate among the, at least in our countries, the idea that maybe other types of forests, for example, these alluvial forests that Marco and Eduardo were talking about, or maybe the more typically Mediterranean forests, can be also be considered candidates for this old growth mature stage in which we delight in this, not necessarily beech forest or oak forest or fir forest, but what about this alluvial or Mediterranean or I don't know, maybe in the Canary Islands, other types of forests? Maybe we lack the cultural stereotypes for these old growth forests in our own regional realities. That is one question for Diego. I would like to ask Martina about this also charming dormouse. I understood, but I don't know if I'm right, that is extinct in the eastern part of Austria, and therefore, Martina, maybe I'm wrong. I understand that you are working at this Wienerwald forest near Vienna. So I understand that this forest dormouse is not already there. So my question, if that is correct, that I'm not sure, do you have currently any project to reintroduce or to work with this species in this eastern part of Austria? And finally, I would like to ask a very maybe a stupid question to Marco and Eduardo. Is just about the one word that I noticed was present in several of the slides, is the word oasis or oasi, oase. Maybe in Italy you have a technical, I mean, we have this word in Spanish, of course, but it has no technical meaning in the world of conservation. So maybe in Italy you use this word with a technical meaning in the conservation arena, and I would like to know about that. Thank you.
Santos, thank you very much for your question. Sure, I think all these kind of structures, forest structures and attributes showed in the last slides could be applied in all kind of forest, European forest. But unfortunately, we have not much reference for some kind of forest habitats, mainly in the Mediterranean context. I'm talking about, for example, Taxus baccata forest, about alluvial forest like this Alnus glutinosa and Fraxinus excelsius forest, or well, what about Olea and Seriatonia forest? There are no old growth reference for most of these kind of forests in our context. So we have to be humble in these terms, and we need more knowledge about some forest habitats in these cases. Okay. I think, for example, alluvial forests are more dynamics than other kind of forests because flooding impact, natural flooding impact, and other pressures, natural pressures, promote them to be more dynamic. So I think some indicators for old growth forests could be fit or adapt to this kind of forest, but probably Marco and his colleague have more experience and information about this kind of forests.
Thank you.
Okay, do you want me to answer the question now? If I got you right, the question was whether the forest dormouse is distributed in whole Austria. And it was in historical times. There were proofs that they could be found around Vienna, but we haven't found them anymore. So we guess it's extinct in the east of Austria. But if you see the map where it's spread across Europe, Austria is kind of a border to its spread, to its dispersal. So maybe yeah, it's normal that it doesn't occur because far in the west we have the garden dormouse, which is the sister species So maybe those two species share Europe. You know what I mean? Was this the answer you expected, or did I got something wrong?
No.
Okay.
That was the question I was answering, right? Yeah. Now, and the second part, if it was about the possible reintroduction projects, but I understand that there are no such reintroduction projects at the moment.
Exactly. What we do is measures in the forest to make it a good habitat for dormice in general, because we have the hazel dormice. But we don't plan to introduce forest dormice.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Coming to the third question. So basically, no, you are right. It's not a technical term, but it's something that grew up together with WWF in Italy. So when there were just 4 national parks throughout the country in the 60s, then WWF really pushed towards expanding the protected area network in Italy. So we also started managing areas as private, either owners or managers, trying to give examples. And then many of those areas through time were recognized as publicly managed, officially recognized protected areas. So it was a quite peculiar history of involvement of protected areas in Italy. So now some of them are marine protected areas, some of them are state reserves, some other are regional reserves and Natura 2000 sites. So we just call them oases overall. And if you want to a little bit of a deep dive into the history of our oases, we just prepared a story map going through this 60-year protection history linked to the overall 30 by 30 challenge. So yeah, if you want to play, it's gonna take a few minutes for you, and you can just use it whenever you want before going to sleep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions or comments or ideas?
Santos, I have a question for Martina. It's a technical question. This is if have you any experience with training dogs for monitoring dormice? Well, in Spain, I know some experience about this with training dogs for monitoring forest bats, and I think it's cool. So, what's your experience or your opinion about this?
That's a very good idea, and I indeed have some experience with those dogs, but they did not search the forest dormice, but the European wildcat. And that's the other animal, rare animal in Austria, in which it's research I'm involved. And the other one I have never seen in person. But yeah, we try to find the cats with partners from the Austrian Conservation Trust. They have some dogs, and they're trying to find. And yeah, it would be a nice idea to do the same with the forest dormice. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Martina. It's cool to see that this kind of dogs can detect, can select not only bats, for example, but specific species of bats. It's absolutely great. So I think it's a good way for improved monitoring in the future. Thank you, Martina.
You're welcome.
So, if there are no other questions, shall we close our fourth session.
Yeah, thank you, Constantina. Before you say goodbye, and thank you to everyone, of course, I would like to give some announcement for next week. So as you know, next week will be the last week of this mini course, the Clovers group mini course within the Enable project and the ENA platform. And we would like to ask you for this last week, for next Thursday, to contribute with some short presentation similar to what Martina and Marco and Eduardo presented today. It's not compulsory. Don't feel like we are asking you in a very, imperative way. It's just an option. But I think we have here a lot of experiences. We have here a lot of points of view. We have here a lot of perspectives. And I think that we should benefit from this richness and diversity, at least in the last week. So Neil said the first day in the introducing seminar that this project is not so much about teaching, but it's more about co-learning, about exchanging this shared knowledge. So to fulfill this purpose, we would like to have, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 cases, maybe 4 or 5 projects that can be presented next week in the online session to be shared with all of us. So if you are one of these volunteers that would like next week to present briefly for 5, 10, 15 minutes, it depends how many people we have. We should make a schedule to fit them all. If you are one of these volunteers, please write Maria Muñoz. I will put everything on email, so you have all the information. And just with the title or the subject of your presentation, it may be the project in which you are currently involved, maybe a project that you were involved in the past, maybe it's just your area, your natural area, your protected area, your Natura 2000 site. And we will try to make a program with, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 presentations that will be the subject of our next online meeting. So there's some question in what topic, as I said, any topic that you may find interesting for this group. We are supposedly a forest group. Today we had a forest session, but in fact we are interested in everything that has to do with nature conservation in Europe, Natura 2000, protected areas, conservation projects, of course, mainly focused on forests, but not only forests. So feel free to present any interesting experience that you may regard worth of being shared with the group.
Of course, social projects are welcome. Environmental education, interpretation, whichever project you think is good for the others to know and discuss.
So if you are one of these volunteers, please write Maria with your proposal, and as soon as possible, because we need some time to prepare everything. And next week, we will see the results of this little call we are doing in this moment. So that's all for our part. And Constantina.
So this is what European Nature Academies is all about. Giving suggestions, giving case studies, asking questions, giving answers, and also participation. And what is more, comparing what things are like in different countries, and how each one of us, from her position and experience and the expertise, in any case, expresses that. So next week is our last session, the fifth one, and we're going to have a last session with all the groups, So Clovers, thank you so much for participating. I hope you enjoyed your time. And saying goodbye, see you next week.